Swifters, so you're feeling hungry? If you are, let's satisfy that hunger by going to the grocery store, and we will build an app to help us. So in the second app on our iOS heavy midterm, we are going to build a Whole Foods grocery app. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new Xcode project called GroceryList. We want to embed a navigation controller in the view controller, add a plus button, add an edit button, and we're going to add some code for edit button pressed, at least to create an IB action for it. And then we've got some text in here when we set up our table view and our table view controller. So when we get everything set up here, it should look like this. So let's go ahead and get that started right now. We'll get into Xcode. I'll launch Xcode 10, even though I got Xcode 11 on my machine. We've been using Xcode 10 in class since we started before Xcode 11 shipped. And we will create a new project, and we're going to call this GroceryList. So it's going to be a single view app. And we'll say grocery list. And the idea behind this is, hey, can we create a simple table view where we pass data back and forth? We're not using any fancy classes or anything like that. We've already built our Star Wars app as the first app in this exam. So this is the second app that we've got. And this will be straightforward. We'll actually be able to leverage what we did on the first app. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the main storyboard. I'd mentioned in the code that we want to embed our view controller in a navigation controller. So I click on the view controller, go up under editor, say embed in navigation controller. Boom, there is our navigation controller. I'll just order these a little bit better. I know I want a table view to show up here, so I'm going to click here and say table view and drag this table view over. And I should have option clicked because I also need to go back here and grab our table view cell, which I put inside of the table view. Now that table view cell is selected, see how it's selected up here? I'm going to go up to the attributes inspector and I'm going to give this an identifier. Just capital C, lowercase ELL is what we usually use. Now I'm going to click on the table view itself and I'm going to pin that to the sides at 0, 0, 0, and 0. So we're all spaced over here. I'm also going to add an edit button here and a plus button here. They're bar button items. So I'm going to click over here and type in bar button. I see bar button items show up. I'm going to drag this over to the upper left-hand corner here. And instead of selecting the edit button down here, I'm going to do a custom button because I'm going to change the word edit to done and done to edit. So I'm just going to change this from the title item to the title will be edit. And then I'm going to go ahead and also click and add a bar button item here. And I can go ahead and select add for this. This is totally fine for me to do for this guy. So there's our add button. Let me go ahead and create my outlets. So I'm going to option. So I clicked on viewcontroller.swift. I'm going to option click on main storyboard. I need an outlet for my table view. So I'll control drag over from the table view, not the cell, but the table view. I'll call this table view. Connect it. Let's see. I'm going to want to refer to my add button here. So I'll control drag over, create an IB outlet. I'll call it add bar button and connect. And I want to set up my edit too. So I'll drag this over and I'll say edit bar button. And then we're also going to have some code that's going to execute when we click on the edit button. So I'm going to drag over and I'm going to say edit button pressed, and I'm going to make that just respond to bar button items, and we've done that. So good. I no longer need my main storyboard, at least not for the code that I'm going to be writing for the next bit here for our table views. So again, when you do table views, always think, I need a delegate, I need a data source, I need a delegate, I need a data source. So if we type in table view dot delegate equals self, then down here table view dot data source equals self. If we linger enough, we're going to get an error that says, hey, we don't have any the required methods in here for this. We have to adopt a protocol. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put in our special table view functions in the extension. So if I type an extension down here, view controller colon table view delegate, remember table view delegate, table view data source, and then if we type in table view data source, Xcode will write this and format it perfectly for us. So these are the two protocols that we adopt. Now we're getting an error in here which says, hey, you know what? If you're going to adopt these protocols, you need some functions. So it's going to add the protocol stubs for the functions. We want to go ahead and create some dummy data in here initially. So let's see, in our variable list up here, we had said, okay, these are going to be a string array called GroceryList So we'll say var grocery list in here equals open brackets and then close brackets. But one thing that I did not do is I didn't put my pardon me, I didn't put my quotation marks around these, and they're all strings, so I need to do that. So I'll put all the quotes in the front and then quotes in the back and separate them by commas. And there we go. And I'd just like to Command A to highlight everything and Control I, and that formats everything in. So what do I need to do now? I need to add the code inside of the stubs. So for our number of rows in section, I always return an integer value, which is the length of elements in our data source. So that's GroceryList.count. Perfect. Then what do we do in our cell for row at? Well, we always create a new cell, so we'll say let cell equal, and this will be table view. We always do that using DQ reusable cell. We always do the one with the identifier string and the index path. So our string identifier is, remember, we added that to our cell. It was capital CELL on main storyboard just a bit ago, and we'll put in index path here, lowercase index, capital path, lower camel case there. So now we've created the cell. Then we return the cell. We know we do that because the UI table view cell is what we return, and then in the middle what we do is we configure the cell with any data that we want to show up for that particular cell. So we're going to say cell dot, and its text label is the default label that they give us, so this isn't a custom cell. I'm going to put in a question mark, but if I didn't put in the question mark, Xcode would remind me and do that for me, and I'll say dot text, so we're updating the text property of the text label, and this should equal grocery list bracket, and it should be at indexPath.row. And now we should have everything working. If we go ahead and do a build and run, let us see, that error goes away. And our table view should set up, and it should show this bogus dummy data that we put in here initially. And while we're waiting for this, let's see what the next steps are in our test. It's taking a while to run. Sorry about that. So let's see, we add our table view. Hopefully this is going to work and it's going to show here. And we get to part B where we set up a detail view controller. So we're going to add a new view controller. It's going to be called detail view controller. We're going to embed this in its own navigation controller. We're going to put in a cancel button, a save bar button item, and we'll have a text field here. And this is the label. It's going to say grocery item. And the text field should be called grocery field. So all right, let's go ahead and take care of that. First, is this running yet? It says it is running. Good, so this looks all perfect. So all right, now we need, when we click on either a cell to modify it, or when we click on plus to be able to add a new record, that's what we want to set up. So we're going to go back over to main storyboard. We're going to add a new view controller. Again, all of this was mentioned in the question. So, whoops, to add a new view controller, we go up under our document, or on our object library. I'm going to type in view controller. Drag over this yellow one here. The whole outline of a view controller follows me. Plop it down here. I'm also going to embed this in a view controller. Why do I do that? Well, I tell you specifically, but the reason why I'm going to do that is we are going to add a elements into our grocery list as well. We're going to allow the user to do that by clicking on plus. What we're going to do when we click on plus is we're going to bubble up from the bottom using a present modally segue, and when we do that, we lose the view controller that we were initially embedded in here, so we have to add another view controller. If we didn't do that, then when we added a record, we wouldn't see our bar button items that we're about to add up here. So let's go add those bar button items too. So I'll type in bar button item, and the first one over here on the left side is going to be our cancel bar button. So let me go ahead and change the attribute to cancel, and it's okay to select cancel in here, and because we're not going to be modifying it. And then down here, I'm going to drag this guy over, and I am going to change this from custom to save, and it's okay to do that as well. And so now that I got my cancel, I got my save, I'm going to go up here and click on label, or I'm on our object library, and I'm going to put a label in here, and I'm also going to put in a text field, and the text field will be called grocery list. Let's go ahead and just slap that stuff in here, and I'll drag this from end to end. I did not tell you to put in any kind of constraints, but I'll do these right here just to, reiterate how you do that. And this is going to be called grocery item. So let me put in the word grocery item colon here, and then sure, let me go ahead and constrain these guys. So I'll click on this guy, the grocery item, I'll constrain it left top, and I'll keep the width and the height the same. You can make it bigger if you wanted to, and I'm going to click on the field below, and I'll constrain that top, left margin, right margin, both of those are 20, and I'll keep the height at 30, and we're constrained and we're good. Now, it's great that we set this up, but we don't have a Swift file that's associated with this view controller. If we hold our cursor over, it just says view controller here. So if we want to write some code, and we do, to execute and to handle whatever's going on in this view controller, what we need to do is create a new Swift file and then set this identity to the new Swift file, the identity for this view controller. So I'm going to add the Swift file called detail view controller right underneath view controller. So I click on view controller first, click on file, new file. Since we're taking a view controller that Apple has a blueprint for, we're going to click on Cocoa Touch class, and we're going to subclass that. Sorry, that's my washing machine in the background. I'm going to click on next, and you can see we're subclassing view controller, and I'm going to type in the name of this class is going to be detail view controller, so I just add detail in front. Select next and save this, and it's been saved, and I'm going to get rid of these green comments in here because I don't need them. They just take up room. So those are gone. And before I can go ahead and create my outlets and my actions in here, I need to go back to my main storyboard, and I need to click on this view controller, go up to the identity inspector, the thing that looks like sorry about the washing machine, looks like a newspaper, but it's really supposed to be an ID card. Click on class, click on detail view controller, and boom, we've made that, set that up. So now that we've set this up, we can go ahead and create our outlets and our actions. So I'm going to click on Detail View Controller, Option click on a main storyboard. Let's see, we're going to need an action for cancel button pressed. And we are also going to need a label for our grocery list item. So I'm going to drag over the cancel button here and call this cancel button pressed. And this is a bar button item. And let's see, I'm not going to change this. Normally what I would do is I would make sure that you couldn't enter empty space in here, but I didn't ask you to do that in the text. And if we did, then we would want to disable save until there is some text which is entered in here. But since we're not going to do any of that stuff, I don't need to create an outlet for save either. I do need to create an outlet for this text field because I want to grab the data that's out of it. And let's see, what did I tell you to call that grocery field? So I'm going to control click from this over here, and I'm going to create an IB outlet called grocery field. Again, make sure it's on a UI text field, click on connect, and we're done with this piece as well. So that's looking good. Actually, so let me see, when do I have, so I have the cancel button here, we did the grocery field, we embedded in a navigation controller. Then we want to modify the app so that clicking on the plus button on the view controller will segue to the detail view controller using a present modally segue. Hint, remember what element we connect the segue to, and give this segue the identifier add detail. So let's go back over here, take a look at our main storyboard. When you click on plus, hint, what do we want to connect this to? The plus button and up here to this navigation controller. So I click on the plus button. You want to make sure that you're definitely on that add bar button item. I'm going to control drag up to the navigation controller, let go, do a present modally. It draws the segue. It would be really nice if Xcode drew it right from the element, but it doesn't. It puts it right in the middle, but it is definitely associated with the bar button. If I click on the segue itself, now I can change this to, if I go up under the segue is clicked, it says this is a storyboard segue. The identifier should be add detail, press enter, boom, we've renamed this. So good. Now it says modify your app so that clicking on a table view cell on the view controller will segue to the detail view controller using a show segue. Give this segue the identity and the identifier show detail, and then also perform any modification so that the selected table view cell doesn't continue to show as a gray selection after it has been clicked. So we'll do these piece by piece. First, I'm going to click on the table view cell, make sure that it's the cell and not the content view inside the cell. So click right on the cell, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the cell, so I'll control drag right from here. You could also do it from the thing right here if you wanted to, and I'm going to drag it right into, not in the navigation controller, but right into our detail view controller. let go. This is going to be a show segue. It's going to be straight across. So our shows always remain in this original navigation controller, but the present modalies bubble up from the bottom. That's why they need their new navigation controller so that you can still access your cancel and your save buttons here. Now I say also name this segue, give it an identifier. So I clicked right on the circle in between here, click on this identifier here, and we're going to call this, what did we say? Show detail. Press enter. You do not need to add an identifier here for this segue. We never refer to that. That just kind of happens automatically because this guy's embedded in this guy. So cool. Now that we've got this set up, let's see. What else did we ask to do in here? So the console segue also perform any modifications if the selected table view does not show as a gray selection. So if I click on my table view cell and look over here for selection, it says default, but if I select none, there will not be any sort of gray lingering selection on here when I click on it. It will still keep its selection, but it will it won't have any of the kind of like lingering grayness in there, which is I think a nicer interface thing to have seen. So great, so this should all work. Now let's see, now it modified your project so that the cancel button returns to the user to the initial view when the cancel button is pressed. So our cancel button pressed code is pretty standard. We've used this same code over and over again. We said, consider this to be a software Lego that you'll regularly use whenever you need to have a cancel button with functionality that operates like this. So I'm going to go back over into our detail view controller. We already said cancel button pressed is an IB action in here, which is all set up. And we'll just say in here, let is presenting in add mode equal presenting view controller. Let's see, this should show up automatically. Presenting view controller, yep. And then is UI navigation controller. So if we were presenting in a new UI navigation controller, then that means that we came in from our present modally, which means we've got to dismiss out of this, otherwise we cancel. So now that we know this, it's either true or false. This is going to give us a Boolean true or false if it did present from a navigation controller or not. If it did, we're going to say if is presenting in add mode is true, then we're going to say dismiss. Animated will be true. Our completion handler is going to be nil. Otherwise, else what we're going to do is we're going to go to navigation controller, which is something that we get as part of this, knowing that we're in a navigation controller here, and we'll say top.pop view controller, and animated should be true. So this is, most of the time in class we were copying and pasting after we wrote this once because we know it's the same unmodified code we're going to use over and over again. Now the cancel button should be working. If you want to build and run it this time just to make sure that everything is working too, you can go ahead and do this. We're not passing over any data, but we should see that we can segue both when we click on plus or when we click on an item, and cancel should get us back. So click on an item, mozzarella, good, cancel. Click on plus, we bubble up from the bottom, good, cancel, great. So now what else do we need down here? So create a string named grocery item in viewController.swift. This will hold the data passed from the view controller to the detail view controller, and will be updated when passing the data from detail view controller back to view controller. So all right, let's go ahead and do this. We're going to click on detail view controller. This is what's going to catch what's passed over. So we'll say var grocery item equals, or we could initialize this right now, or we could just say string exclamation point. Actually, we want to do string exclamation point here, because what we're going to do in here is we're going to check in our view did load if grocery item equals nil, then we'll say grocery item equals an empty string, and that will be the case if we're adding a new record. And then what we want to do after this is we want to update the grocery field dot text equals grocery item, which is a string. So good. So we've got this. We've got the thing to catch it. And then now that we've done this, modify our app so that if the user selects on a cell in the table view, the grocery list array element in the selected cell will be passed over the grocery list item and will display in the grocery field. And then also make sure that the plus button is pressed and the grocery field is empty. if the plus button is pressed, the grocery field is empty. That will be the case because if we click on the plus button here, after we set up our prepare for Segue, it will be nil, and then we'll clear out everything which is in here. But here's the beautiful thing about the way that we wrote our code. We can reuse so much code that we've written. So if you already wrote the Star Wars API app, we can grab our prepare for Segue right out of that. So I'm going to go over to the Star Wars app that we built in the previous video, which was the first app that you did in your exam. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab prepare for Segue. I'm going to copy this whole function. I'm going to go back over into viewcontroller.swift in here in my GroceryList app. I'm going to paste this in. What are we going to change? Well, we called it show detail, so that's okay. Our detail view controller is called detail view controller, so that's okay too. The one thing that we want to change is we are not passing anything into species data. We're passing it into grocery item, the string. And this should be, we don't have any species array here. It should be, what do we call it? Grocery list in here. So this will grab the string, pass it over. We don't need this index value here. We also do want to unselect anything that we select on here. So this is going to be totally fine too. Boom, we're done. We pass the stuff over. If you want to build and run and make sure that everything works, we can go ahead and do that. Now we're also going to need to do an unwind to pass back any edited stuff in here too. So we want to pass data from the view controller, so we want to make sure that we update the app so that the save button works, and we can either add a new grocery item to the bottom or of the grocery list, or we can update any grocery list item that we've clicked on. So let's see what would happen if we clicked on basil. Basil shows up here, cool. If we click on plus, it's a new one in here too. So it's passing over the stuff that I'm clicking on, which is great. We don't see the lingering gray click on here too, which is dynamite. So how do we pass stuff back? That's where we do our unwind. And remember, we've got to write our unwind function first. But our unwind function behaves pretty much the same in all of the different code that we're using. So what we'll do for our unwind function is we can call that segue anything that we want. But why don't we call it unwind from detail is good. So we're going to type in here at IB action. It's one of the few times where we type in IB action instead of control dragging over. And this is going to be a func, and we'll call this unwind from detail view controller. Open parentheses. We could give it any name, but that's a good name. And why don't we call this? Or then we have to pass the parameter. We absolutely have to have it be a UI storyboard segue. And this is not returning any value here, so we'll open and close parentheses here. We're calling inside the segue that handles the unwind. We'll call that segue. And then the first thing that we want to do is we want to see, hey, where are we coming from? So we'll say let source equal, and it's going to be segue.source. And we're going to subclass this as detail view controller. The reason we're doing this is so that we can recognize the variables that we have inside of the detail view controller. If we didn't do this, we wouldn't be able to find the grocery item, for example, that we're going to pass back. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say if let selected index path equal table view dot index path for selected row. So what this does, it says, okay, if you have an item which was selected. We have an item which is selected only if we clicked on the item and the show detail is showing. Because if we didn't click on the item, then we didn't do show detail, which meant we went in through add detail, which meant we deselected an item. So we know if we're coming back by checking this, do we have to update the item because we clicked on an item, or do we have to add it anew, which what we'll do in the else condition right down here is add the new value to the end. So we're going to assume right down here, oh, if we did this, then what we're going to do is we're just updating the item that we selected. So we're going to take a look at that selected item, and we're going to say grocery list, and then in parentheses here, it's going to be at selected index path dot row, and that's going to equal our source dot grocery item. So again, that's what we're passing back in here and we're putting in here. And then once we've got that, we'll just do a reload rows. So we'll say table view dot reload. There's no reload rows, so you've got a row, so you've got to do a reload rows. And as we've mentioned, what we have to put in here is our index path, lowercase I index path in here, our selected index path, in brackets, because it's just going to be, since it's rows, it expects to have an array in here. but this is the same code that we've used in all of our functions at this point here, so nothing changes from what we've done in class and what you've done in your exercises. And then what are we going to do for our animation? You can select anything in here, but automatic sounds fine. That's done for the condition where we're returning and we're editing an existing value. What are we doing if we're adding one? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create the index path that we want to add, which we'll just say let index path. So we'll create that value here. That's a good name for it, is capital index path. So we'll say go to the index path factory, and we will create something that's got a row and a section in here. So for the row, what we're going to type in here is we're going to add this to the very end of the list. So since we're 0 indexed, what we're going to do is we're going to say GroceryList, which is our array of strings, dot count. So count minus 1 is the last item in there. So by saying count, we're saying, hey, that's going to be our new path in here. So 1 below what we've got so far. The section is going to be 0 because we don't have any additional sections. So now that we've got an index path, what we can do is we can say table view dot insert, and we have to say rows just like we did before, because there's not an individual row. And what we're going to insert in here is going to be index path that we just created here. And what animation do we want to do? Any of them will work, but bottom is a pretty good one because we're going to insert it at the end. Then we'll say table view dot insert rows at index path. Oh, we just did that one. I'm so sorry. We need to do, so we've created our index path here. We've got it from GroceryList.count. We got to do here, this is what I forgot. We need to append it. So if we say GroceryList.append, and what are we going to append in here? We're going to append in source.groceryItem. So that goes to the end of the list here. Then what we do is we insert the new index path down here, and then when we once we've inserted the new grocery path, it will update the element in there so it will show properly. And then let's go just scroll to the bottom here. So if we say table view dot scroll to row at and we'll just put in the index path in here because it's the very last one. And for position, we'll put bottom, and for animated, we'll put in true. So this should go ahead and handle any of the updates that we have, whether we're updating an existing one or we're adding a new value. Let's see if this works. So I'll click on build and run. And mozzarella, if I want to put in instead, call this mozzarella cheese. Click on save, and we should have, the reason why it didn't work is I have to do a few more things over here. So I just set up my unwind. Now I need to go to the main storyboard, and I need to, again, we work backwards. So the last thing that we have happen here is unwind executes. And to execute the unwind, what I need to do is I need to create my exit segue, and that's just by control dragging from save into the exit box here. It says, okay, when you exit out of here, what do you want to do? I want to execute this unwind function that I just wrote. And before we have this work, we need to do a prepare for segue in here that takes whatever the user typed into the field and puts it into grocery list so that when we get or grocery items, so that when we get source.groceryitem, we've got the very latest thing that we typed in here. So if we go into viewcontroller.swift, we can say right after view did load, prepare for segue is what we want to select, and we'll say grocery item equals grocery field dot text, and exclamation is fine in there. We can force unwrap, no problem. Now everything should work. And the next things that we're going to write are going to be these ultimate software Legos that change very, very briefly. So let's see, mozzarella. So if we type in here mozzarella cheese and do save, we can say, whoa, mozzarella cheese is changed. And what if we add something in here? So we said Mark Zuckerberg is going to show up at our party here, and he's going to bring goat. So there we go. There's one of his goats. So this is all working fine. Excellent. Next thing that we need to do down here is we need to enable deleting and moving. So first set up the edit button pressed so that it does the same code that we did in class, where if you click on edit button for the first time, we get into editing mode, we change the the title of the edit button to done. We disable plus so that we can't get away from it. And then when we click on done, we get out of editing mode. We change to edit here, and we enable the add bar button. So the code is unchanged from anything that we'd written previously. So we just kind of reuse that software code, or jokingly calling those software Legos. You just snap in. And so what we'll do in here is we'll say if table view dot editing. So this is either is editing, so it's a Boolean. It's either true or false. And if it's false, we're not in editing mode, then we must have clicked on it outside of editing mode and we got into editing mode. So what we're going to do down here is we'll say table view dot set editing. We'll make that true. The animation will do true as well. We'll say edit bar buttons title we'll do title equals done, and we'll do add bar button item dot is enabled, and this is false. So now that we've got this set up, we're going to do the opposite right up here. So I'm going to paste this in, and we're going to say set editing is false here. Instead of doing done, we're going to go back to edit, and is enabled is going to be true. And let's build and run just to make sure that this works. And do I need to do a set title in here instead of just doing the title for the button? I'm not sure. Let's see. So when we click on edit, it goes to done, done goes to edit, edit goes to done, done goes to edit. We see that we're disabling this so we can't click to go out. So that's looking good. Next thing we need to do in order to be able to handle deletions and additions is we just need to update some standard code that we use. So for our deletion, it's the commit editing style table view. So these are both going to be table view functions, so I'll put them both in the extension. And if I say editing style like this, I see a couple of different options. I want commit editing style, this first one here. And then what do? Well, we're going to check to see if the editing style is delete. So we'll say if editing style, whoops. And editing style is one of the parameters that's being passed in here too. So we've got editing style, and editing style right in here it's a table view editing style here. So we'll say if this equals, and we're going to say dot delete, open and close curly. And again, this is the same code that we've written over and over again. The only thing that we need to do is to change what data element we're accessing in here. So we're going to access GroceryList dot remove, and it's going to be at, and so what are we removing at? Well, we get an index path up here, so we're just going to say remove it at index path dot row. So now that we've removed that, then what we want to do is we also want to delete the table view cell for the row that we've deleted too. So we say table view dot delete rows at, again it's rows, so it's plural in there, so we do this inside of brackets, and we just say index path and then width, and you can do any of these, but fade is a pretty good one for delete. And that's it. That'll handle our deletions. And then what do we want to do here for our for movement? We can go down here and say, let me think of what this is called. This is move row at. So it's a table view function in here, not can move row at, which we have used, but no, we want this to be move row at. And we're pretty standard here. We're going to say let item to move equals, and then what are we going to move? Well, we're going to remove something or move something from grocery list, and then you get two values in here, your source index path and your destination index path. So we want to grab at source index path dot row, and so now that we've got the item to move, now we can delete that item from its location. So we can say grocery list dot remove, and we're removing it at source index path dot row. So now it's gone, but now we want to do an insert here. So we're going to say grocery list dot insert, and the new element is going to be item to move. So we deleted it up here, but fortunately we saved it in this little item to remove holding spot. And where are we going to insert it at? We're going to insert it at the destination index path dot row. And so now if we stop this and we build and run, you get a 2-point bonus for doing saving some stuff in here. But I'll stop at this point just so we have all the 100% points in here. So here we go. Things are looking good. If we want to do mozzarella and then type in cheese in here, and Mark Zuckerberg shows up, and he's going to bring a goat. And if we say, all right, we're going to edit this, and we're going to move the goat to the top, and we're done. But then you say, I don't want any goat to be in there, so you can delete the goat goes away. All this is working perfectly, and once it's working perfectly, one of the things you can do is, instead of putting in bogus data in here, you can start from scratch. So this is the answer for the second app that you built. I hope that works well. Oh, and look, when we get rid of all the items in here, we need to tell this specifically, hey, this is a string array. So this is going to work perfectly if we go ahead and build and run. I hope that went well for you. If not, now you are armed with what you need to do on your makeup test. Keep at it.